We are taught in school that the disappearance of a job is a natural evolution of progress. We are told that as the candlemaker gave way to the light bulb and the stable boy gave way to the mechanic, the world simply became more efficient. This is the version of history written for children. It is the version that ignores the brutal, calculated reality of how human labor is liquidated. If you want to understand why the factory doors in your hometown are bolted shut, or why a middle manager's 20-year career can be deleted by a single line of code in a Silicon Valley basement, you have to look past the slogans of innovation and digital transformation. You have to look at the world as a global ledger where the most expensive line item has always been you. For centuries, the story of work was a story of muscles and craft, but beneath the surface of the Industrial Revolution, a darker mechanism was being built not to help the worker, but to bypass him entirely. This is not just a story about machines. It is a story about the accountant's war on the human overhead. It is a cautionary tale that echoes from the Luddite riots of 1811 to the server farms of today, demonstrating a brutal economic truth. An empire does not care about the dignity of your labor. It only cares about the margin of its profit. To understand how this tragedy unfolds, we must look at the world not as a collection of careers, but as a system of energy and cost. To the outside observer, a factory or an office looks like a community. But to the men who sit in the boardrooms of global capital, looking at the raw financial data, those people are not assets, they are frictions. They are a liability that demands food, rest, and a pension. While we were told that technology would set us free to pursue leisure, the ledgers tell a different story. They show a relentless, 200-year-old heist where the value created by the human hand is systematically transferred to the owner of the machine. The job didn't evolve, it was foreclosed upon. To understand the disappearance of a job, you have to stop thinking of work as a human activity and start seeing it through the cold eyes of a Victorian actuary. In the 1800s, the British Empire didn't just export textiles and tea. It exported an ideology of efficiency that viewed the worker as a machine made of meat. And machines made of meat are notoriously unreliable. They strike for better wages, they tire after 12 hours, and they eventually die, requiring a pension for their widows. If you look at the industrial ledgers of the mid-19th century, you see the birth of the scarcity engine. The goal was never to create more for everyone. It was to decouple production from the person. We are told the story of the Luddites, the weavers who smashed the power looms, as a story of angry men fearing progress. But the Luddites weren't anti-technology, they were anti-liquidation. They saw that the machine wasn't being brought in to help them weave faster. It was being brought in to make their skill worthless. It was the first time in history that a man's value could be deleted overnight by a piece of iron. This is the blueprint that still governs our world today. When a corporation offshores 5,000 manufacturing jobs to a special economic zone in Southeast Asia, they aren't just moving a factory. They are exploiting a geographic arbitrage. They are finding a place where the human overhead is cheaper, where the safety standards are lower, and where the friction of labor rights has been erased by the local government. But the modern era has added a terrifying new layer to this old game. In the 20th century, if you lost your factory job, you could move to the city and find a service job. You could drive a truck, manage a floor, or file paperwork. You were still needed. But today, the accountant's scythe has been sharpened by silicon. We are entering an era where capital no longer needs to move to find cheaper humans. It is building a world where it doesn't need the human at all. The job hasn't just moved across the ocean, it has moved into the cloud, into an algorithmic black box where the cost of labor is effectively zero. If you were to look at the global economic landscape of the 1970s, you would see a world that felt remarkably stable. In the West, the post-war golden age had created a massive middle class. In the Soviet Union, the oil high was masking the rot of a stagnant system. But beneath this surface, a new kind of weapon was being forged in the elite universities of Chicago and London. It wasn't a weapon made of steel, it was a doctrine of shareholder primacy. Before this moment, a corporation was viewed as a social pillar. It had a responsibility to its town, its country, and its workers. But the new doctrine stripped away the sentiment. It argued that a company has only one moral obligation: to maximize the value of its stock. To the men who Embrace this ideology, a job was no longer a contribution to society. It was a cost center that needed to be optimized out of existence. This birthed the era of the lean corporation. We were told that lean meant agile and modern, but in the cold language of the ledger, lean simply meant removing the human safety net. This is when the concept of the disposable career was born. Look at the data from 1973 onwards, and you see a terrifying divergence. Productivity. The amount of value a worker produces continues to climb, powered by new computers and faster logistics. But wages flatline. The gap between those two lines is the efficiency trap. It represents trillions of dollars in wealth that used to go into the pockets of the people who did the work, but is now being diverted into the pockets of the people who own the algorithms. By the 1990s, this process reached its terminal phase, the Great Outsourcing. Just as the British Empire once moved its textile production to India to bypass the high wages of Lancashire, modern corporations use the digital revolution to move their back offices to anywhere on the planet where a human could be rented for pennies on the dollar. They proved that in a globalized world, your loyalty to a company means nothing if your salary can be underbid by someone 5,000 miles away. The job didn't disappear because it wasn't necessary. It disappeared because your life was too expensive to maintain. We are often told that the current wave of job losses is different because it is high-tech. We are told that artificial intelligence is a new species of problem. But if you look at the architecture of the modern digital economy, you realize that AI is not a new invention. It is the final refinement of the 19th century factory. It is the ultimate tool for labor de-skilling. In the 1900s, the goal was to take a master craftsman and replace him with a person who only had to pull one lever. Today, the goal is to take a creative professional, a writer, a coder, a designer, and replace them with a prompt. The technology doesn't create art or code. It harvests the collective labor of millions of humans, processes it through a statistical model, and sells it back to the corporation at the cost of electricity. This has created what economists now call the ghost work economy. If you look past the sleek interfaces of your favorite apps, you find a hidden world of millions of micro-workers in the global south, labeling data for pennies to train the very algorithms that will eventually replace them. It is a digital echo of the Sterling scandal, extracting the value of the many to subsidize the convenience of the few. But there is a deeper, more systemic reason jobs are disappearing: the financialization of reality. In the modern era, the most profitable companies are no longer those that make things. They are the ones that manage rent. Whether it's a platform charging a 30% fee on every transaction, or a software company charging a monthly subscription for tools you used to own, the economy has shifted from production to extraction. In this environment, a permanent employee is a drag on the valuation. The stock market rewards companies that fire people and replace them with contractors or automated systems. The job isn't disappearing because the work isn't there. The job is disappearing because the human contract, the idea that a company and its workers grow together, has been torn up and thrown into the furnace of quarterly earnings. We have built an economic engine that views a thriving middle class not as a customer base, but as a surplus cost. We have been conditioned to believe that the economy is a circle that the money paid to a worker eventually returns to the company as a customer. But the architects of the New World Order have realized that in a globalized, automated system, the circle is an inefficiency. They have replaced the circle with a vacuum. If you look at the modern landscape, you see a world where the middle has been hollowed out. On one side, you have the owners of the intellectual property, the digital lords who own the code, the brands, and the debt. On the other, you have a vast, precarious gig class that serves them. The job didn't die because of a lack of work. It died because the people at the top realized they no longer needed a stable, well-paid middle class to maintain their own wealth. The lesson of history is that empires don't collapse because they run out of resources. They collapse when they break the social contract that makes people believe in the future, just as the Spanish Empire collapsed because it valued silver over its own farmers, and the Soviet Union fell because it valued its missiles over its bread. Our modern system is flirting with a terminal error. It is valuing the algorithm over the architect. But there is a final truth that the ledgers won't show you. Every time a job is deleted, a bit of the foundation of the nation is chipped away. You can have a stock market that hits record highs and a population that can no longer afford to live in the cities they built. But that is not a recovery, it's a liquidation sale. The jobs of the past are not coming back. The accountant's war has been won. But history teaches us that when a system becomes too efficient at extracting value while leaving nothing for the people, it becomes brittle. It becomes a giant with feet of clay, waiting for the first sign of a storm. The question is no longer what causes jobs to disappear. We know the answer. It is the relentless pursuit of a world without friction. The real question is what happens to a civilization when the humans are the friction. This is the Wealth History Tales channel. Subscribe now to stay ahead of the curve, because when the history books are written, you'll want to be among the few who saw the code for what it was. History doesn't repeat, but the ledgers always balance in the end. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.